Welcome, artists. I just wanted to make a video in case you missed the day when we talk about sketchbook requirements and how to use your sketchbook, because it's such a fundamental part of this class and really can be a fundamental part of your life, whether you're an artist or you pursue some other career. Sketchbook is just a great place to unwind, to be creative, to just kind of visually brainstorm. And so whether you're an artist or you choose to do something else, you can use this information throughout your life. So I always want to teach you guys as artists how to use a tool that is so fundamental to your success and your growth as an artist. So we're going to take a minute and talk about that. But before we do, we're going to talk about requirements. Hold on a second. I forgot to play this slideshow. There we go. So why exactly as an art teacher am I teaching you this? Well, I told you one reason, because you can use it for the rest of your life. So I'm not worried about teaching you guys just in this class. I want you to use the information that you learn here into the future. So drawing is a fundamental skill for every artist. So whether you're a sculptor or an interior designer or a graphic designer, even a web designer, an illustrator, whatever it might be, your sketchbook and drawing is such a foundational skill. You got to be able to draw at least a little bit. And so your sketchbook is just somewhere you can practice all the time. It's just a nice thing to have. It's a bound book with pages, and so it's just convenient. It gives you a place to visually brainstorm, which we'll talk about later. It helps you think through ideas and make mistakes. It's just a place where you can be messy and not have the pressure of making beautiful, fabulous works of art on every page. We'll talk more about that too. So what are your requirements? So obviously for your sketchbooks, you got to have a sketchbook. You can't have a sketchbook assignment and complete a sketchbook assignment unless you have one. So you got to have one. They need to be no smaller than 8 by 10, which is a little bit smaller than a normal piece of paper, or 9 by 12, which is a little bit bigger than a normal piece of paper. So if you go to the store and you find one about this size, you're good. I would highly recommend getting one that is spiral bound with hard covers. In fact, I'm going to show you mine. So this is what I mean. It's got a spiral binding. It's got hard, thick covers on it that aren't flimsy, and they're not really that expensive. $6 or $7 at Walmart, you can get one like that. So it's a good investment. So get a good one. You won't regret it. So we'll work on sketchbooks every day in class at the opening of class in silence for 15 to 25 minutes. And I know that's a big window, but some days I might be busy getting stuff ready for class and I need that little bit of extra time. And it also gives you guys extra time to work on your sketchbooks. And there's also other days when you guys are just invested in your sketchbooks, usually towards the end of the week when you've really gotten rolling and you've thought of an idea and you're applying it. And I just like to give you guys that time so you can, enjoy your sketchbooks. If you're late to class, it is going to totally affect your sketchbook grade, because as soon as you walk in this class and the bell rings, you should have your sketchbook out and working on it. So if you show up late, you're not just going to get tardies and, reprimanded and written up eventually. You're going to it's going to hurt your grade in the long run. So please be on time. You've got plenty of time in between class to get here. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so your sketchbook's got to have value, which is shading, or color. It can always have both, because color has value, but it's got to at least have value. So whether you're drawing in pen and you have to use cross-hatching or hatching or some type of shading with your pen, or you're working in color, you've got to have some sort of value or color or both. Your sketchbook should be a full page. I give you like that 15 to 25 minutes every day, and so that adds up throughout the week to about 100 minutes, which is over an hour and 20 minutes. So in that amount of time, you should be able to get a good amount of that page filled up. So that's what my expectations is, a full page. And we'll see what some of that looks like as we move through this. So when we get into our elements of art and principles of design, you guys in Art 2 know this, that you have to write whatever element it is. You write the element, which, say, the first one we do is line. You write that on either the back or the front. If you put it on the front, it needs to be small because I don't want you to use your writing to take up the page. And it's got to have the definition of line, which is a point moving through space. It's a little longer than that, but that's basically what a line is. And so you write that on there, and you write your definition. And I do this so that when you look back through your sketchbook, you can look at that definition and say, oh, that was for line. And you can ask yourself, was I successful at using line? And that's why I have you write it on there too, because then I can find what your sketchbook is for that element of art really easily because the definition's on it. And if you don't write it, you get major points taken off. So please do that. I do want you to date your drawings. That's not just helpful for me, it's helpful for you, that if you want to go back, 5 years from now, you can say, oh, I was in, 10th grade in high school whenever I did that. So it's nice to date your drawings. So when you write out your definition, put the date on it. They got to be turned in on the blue shelf under your class number or block. I'll show you guys that when you're in class. If you're watching this, you're probably not in class. So when you come in the door, there's this big blue shelf on the left, and you just put your sketchbooks on there every Friday at the end of class. I will not look in your bin for it. I won't do it. You will get a 0 for your sketchbook before I go and look in your bin for your sketchbook. Because if I let you guys do that, I'll be looking through bins every Friday trying to pull out your sketchbook, and I just don't need to do that. You're in high school now. Act like you're in high school. Let's see. Yeah, they're due every Friday, and I don't accept them late. It's the only thing in this class I won't accept late. I might take points off of other assignments when they're late and, give you credit for turning it in, but with sketchbooks, not going to happen. It's too much. I've got a lot of sketchbooks to grade every Friday, and if I take them late, then it just piles up and I can't handle it. So if you know you're going to be out on Friday, make sure that you turn in your sketchbook on Thursday. If you do end up being sick over the weekend, send me an email. Get on Canvas and say, Mr. JancART, I'm sorry I wasn't there. I will give you my sketchbook first thing Monday. If you're communicating with me, I'm going to be gracious. Otherwise, I'm not going to be. So make sure you are wise about that. Okay, so those are the rules for using your sketchbooks. And I'm going to make myself a little smaller there. This part is more about how to use your sketchbook. And so I'm going to try to move through this rather quickly. Probably spend a little more time in class talking about it, but I don't want to bore you to tears with a video, but it is really important. So hang in there, and it's super helpful. These are things that I've learned. These are things that other people have taught me, so I want to pass them on to you. So how to use your sketchbook joyously and effectively. So the first thing I would tell you is to keep all your pages. I was terrible about this. I would have sketchbooks that when I finished them, they were like half of as thick as when I bought them because I ripped so many pages out. Because every time I screwed up, I'd just throw the page away. And I want to tell you why you should keep them. So obviously when you draw something good, it helps you go back and look at things that you did do good, and you rejoice over those things. And wow, I did that pretty good, obviously, right? So looking back may inspire you to develop something further. I can't tell you how many half-finished pages I have in most of my sketchbooks. That's just, every artist does that. It's very normal to get halfway through a sketch, and it's not that you don't like it, it's just that you never went back and finished it. You started another drawing, you got hung up on that, and you just forgot to go back, whatever it may be. But it may, you may flip back through your sketchbook when you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. You might go back and say, oh, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to finish it, or I'm going to start it over. It was a good idea. Didn't really like how it started, so I'm going to finish it. So, and reviewing your failures can teach you what not to do, and they can also encourage you when you look ahead and see, I struggled with that there, and then I learned how to fix it here. And it helps you kind of like see your growth as an artist. Because if you only keep your good pages, you don't see how you grow. You don't see an honest representation of, how you're developing as an artist. It's kind of like keeping a journal that you lie to all the time, that you're making up stories about your life. If you went back and read it, it'd be like, or if you only wrote about your best days and you never wrote about the bad days, and somebody went back and read your journal, they'd be like, wow, this person never had a bad day. And it's just a dishonest representation of who you are. So it's really good for you to keep those failures. It's not fun, but it's good. So here's an example. These drawings on this page, there's nothing exciting about them. They're decent, they're not great. This one's, the pig is pretty cool, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing. But this stuff up here, no big deal. The artist made some notes about stuff, did some thumbnail drawings, which are supposed to be messy anyway. There's a little sketch of a cabin up here, but it's nothing, like earth-shattering. And over here on this right page, I don't recommend using a lined notebook for your sketchbook. It's just not the best kind of paper. Just better to have blank paper, right? Anyway, so this is a younger artist, I'm sure, maybe middle school, could be high school, because it's not there's good things about this drawing. One of the things that I like about this is how you see this perspective of the bridge, and the bridge gets wider as it gets closer. So that's a good thing. But look at the character's arms. This arm looks about right. It's about the right length. But look at this arm. The elbow's like all the way down, like at her hips, and then bends out to her forearm. So she's got this crazy long arm. And then there's this arrow right here that points into her eye for some reason. I don't know if the artist was going to make a note and then didn't, or if there's a bow and arrow she's getting ready to get shot in the eye. I have no idea. So there's not, this is not a fantastic drawing, but it's a decent drawing. It's good enough that, in 3 or 4 years, something my daughter recently started to do. She's going to turn 14 in October, but she pulled out one of her old sketchbooks from when she was like 8 or 9, and she's going back and redrawing a lot of the drawings just to see her progress. So here we got the artist glued this picture of Tom Hiddleston, which most of us know as Loki, and they wanted to do a drawing of Tom. Now, this is not a great representation of Tom Hiddleston. It's decent though. The proportions are pretty good. They put his eyes in the right place, his nose, his mouth. They're all in the right place, his ears. But it doesn't look exactly like him. It looks like it could be like a distant cousin maybe or something, right? So there's good things and there's bad things. They kind of got the feeling of it, but not the clarity, if we can say it that way. So this is a really good example of, keep it for now, and then maybe in 5 years you want to come back and try and draw this picture again, and you can see how you developed as an artist. So it's a good reason to keep the pages. All right, number 2, look and learn. This is something we need to understand as artists, that we study. We don't study math necessarily. We don't study English. We study with our eyes, with how we see. And so your sketchbook is a really good place to be doing that, to be studying. And see, part of studying is learning. And when we're learning, we don't always know the best way. We don't exactly have the concepts yet. We're learning the concepts. And so when we're looking at something and we're learning about it, we're not necessarily going to draw it perfectly, but we're learning. And even if we do draw it well, it's going to help us retain what we're learning. So we study things like value, which is shading, light and shadow, shapes, lines, textures, forms, color, all that stuff. We study those things. basically, if you draw 100 chairs, you're going to know how to draw chairs because you've drawn 100 of them. It's part of learning and looking at something. You don't just know how to draw a chair. If I ask you guys to sit down and draw a chair, you might think you know what a chair looks like, and then you draw it, and then you say, "Oh wow, I don't know how to, like, you know it's got four legs, you know it's got a seat and a back." And you'd put it together enough to where you could tell it was a chair, but it's not going to look perfectly like a chair. Not like when you actually sit a chair in front of you and draw it. And you'll learn how to, work all the proportions and stuff. So, very important. You use things like photos and objects in nature and animals and other people's artwork and anything you can get your hands on. But you've got to be looking at stuff. You can't expect yourself to have an image in your head and be able to translate it on paper every time. That takes years and years and years of practice and gaining knowledge, visual knowledge. So, artists don't have this magic power where they can just have something in their head and they put it on paper. Everybody thinks that, but that's not how it works. You learn those things by studying. So, embrace studying visually. Okay, here we go. Come on. Copying other artists' artwork is not cheating, it's learning. As long as you're not trying to sell it as yours. Don't copy somebody else's artwork and then turn it in and tell me it's yours. If you want to do a work of art that is from a famous artist, that's fine. Just tell me. And I'll be like, oh, okay, well, you're learning. That's absolutely fine. So real quickly, you can see here that the artist, see all these blobs of color right here. The artist is learning what colors, they're trying to develop a color palette for doing daisies, or probably sunflowers actually. And so they're developing a color palette. They're studying the colors. Here they're making notes because of their studying, which is absolutely fine. It's called annotating, about things about sunflowers. Here they've put all these pictures in here of these sunflowers so that they can then draw them. These are value studies of these sunflowers, so they're trying to figure out where the lights and darks and midtones are. Also trying to figure out what kind of lines they want to use, all that kind of stuff. So, studying. Here you've got an artist who's studying some sea life. There's fish, and these I think are called a nautilus. Catfish, penguins, just studying, doing quick sketches to learn what these animals look like. These aren't finished drawings. They're good drawings, but they're not finished drawings, so just kind of free and loose. And then here you have some photos pasted in this person's sketchbook. And what this artist is doing is developing a style. They're trying to do these portraits in a specific style, probably their style. And so they're making notes, et cetera, et cetera. They're studying original pictures, or this looks like it might actually be artwork, and then developing it into their own style. Okay, there's three more. So be messy and not careful. This is the hardest for most artists to embrace. I have a few of you guys who are really good at this. You probably struggle more with being careful than you do with being messy, which is a whole nother problem to address. But in your sketchbook, it's really okay to be kind of messy and loose and not be thinking about the finished work of art. You're more concerned about the process and learning. So just think of your sketchbook as a friend to bounce ideas off of. Your closest friend that you can just vent to, you can talk to, you can tell them anything, and they're not going to judge you. That's how you should look at your sketchbook, which is really difficult because it's your sketchbook and you're going to judge yourself, but you've got to get into this mindset where you want to be loose and free. Like I said, your sketchbook isn't a means to an end. It is about the process. So don't feel like your sketchbook is a local art critic. It's just a part of the process. And being overly careful really stifles your creativity. Believe me, I know. This is me, that I struggle, even still I struggle with being overly careful in my sketchbook. I'm a detail-oriented kind of artist, and so it's really hard for me to just relax and make a mess in my sketchbook. I've gotten better about it, and I'm learning more and more every year, but it's a struggle. So, but I have learned that the more I relax, the more creative I'm able to be. And a final note, it is okay to do finished work in your sketchbook. I've got finished work in my sketchbooks. I've got sketchbooks dedicated to finished work. But then I also have other sketchbooks where I'm doing the messy work to prepare for those finished works. So for you guys in this class, it's okay to do some finished work. Like some of your sketchbook assignments over the week, they might turn out really neat and beautiful, and you might even say, Mr. JancART, can I carry this assignment into next week so that I can have 2 full weeks to work on it because it's just really turning out good and I want to add more details? That's absolutely fine, but that should be the exception and not the rule. So just some examples of students or artists being kind of messy. These are all good drawings, but none of them are finished drawings. They're just studying faces. You can even see that there's red drawings behind these drawings. So there's not a great deal of care there. It's just they're trying to learn something. And the same here. This is all planning. They're rough sketches. I'm guessing it's some kind of illustration or comic book, and they're just doing different viewpoints, thinking about values, building structures, how the characters are going to be placed in scenes, that kind of thing. So nothing neat. And this artist here, even though it's colored, this is still not a super careful sketch. They're making notes about what they were doing that day while they were drawing. These are just other sketches kind of put in a box at the top. So nothing super careful. So you want to also do more than draw in your sketchbooks. This is not something you absolutely have to do, but if you've never done collage, or you've never done watercolor, or you've never done pen and ink, markers, whatever it might be, your sketchbook is a place to mess around with that stuff and see if you like it. You might be surprised. Now, I used to hate watercolor, and I started experimenting with it at one point, and I found out I really enjoyed it. So you can also write down your thoughts, write down textures, conversations you've had, sounds you hear. It's everyday things that inspire us as artists. Don't try to work with something you don't care about. So yeah, make notes about your work and whatever the subject matter is. That is called annotating. It's a fancy name for it. It just means you're writing down notes in your sketchbook. They don't have to be legible by anybody but you. So it's not about anything but making a reference. Stick things in your sketchbook. I've got a whole closet full of magazines. So while you're here, you can ask for one of those magazines, look for things to stick in your sketchbook, and create a collage. Use it as a typography reference. Use it as face reference for, if you're trying to learn how to draw people, you want to find a face to draw. That's an easy way to do that. So things to be inspired by. So here are just some examples of annotation. You can tell this artist is studying seashells, and they're just making notes about the seashells, not just visual notes, which are drawings in this case, line types, you see that right there, texture types, you see this right here, up and down this side, and written notes. This artist is drawing bottles, which, believe it or not, making glass look realistic is pretty tough. So you can actually tell that they've pasted several things in their sketchbook. They've made notes and cut them out and then pasted them in their sketchbook. They're pasting, pictures of bottles in their sketchbook, along with doing some drawings as well. And this one's of shoes, same thing. There's lots of shoes. Right here, you see this is a study of different values in different ways. I think this one right here may be a picture, and they're building off of that picture by drawing the rest in. So it's a really good exercise. We might do that in some of the classes this year. Okay, last one is to explore different types of media. Your sketchbook's not just for graphite. Graphite is pencil. You can use it for colored pencils and oil pastels and markers and ink pens and anything else you can think of. If you want to do watercolor in your sketchbook, you're going to need to buy a little bit of a heavier paper for your sketchbook if you really want to get into that, because it does make your page wrinkle a little bit, so you need something heavy. Canson makes a sketchbook called Multimedia XL. That's on the paper that I gave you about your supply list. It's listed there, but it just has a little bit of a heavier watercolor type paper in it. But even with that, you can't soak the paper. There's some techniques with watercolor where you use lots of water, and you couldn't really do that effectively in your sketchbook. But you can do some light coloring and still get the watercolor effect really well. Some of the works of art we looked at and are going to look at, you'll see that. So yeah, for instance, this is watercolor in the background with ink. Here the artist is pasting things, pieces of cardboard, cutouts from magazines, text, and then they've also drawn there as well. Here there's notes, there's drawing, there's wire pasted into your sketchbook, which is fine to do stuff like that. Just keep in mind that the more stuff you put in your sketchbook, it's going to start to get, like even when it's closed, it's going to be fat. But this is really expressive, though, work of art. And so in the end, I want you to make a commitment to do these things. I want you to keep every page. I want you to look and learn. I want you to be messy and not careful. Do more than draw and explore different types of media. These are all really good things for you to do to grow as an artist and to use your sketchbook the way it's meant to be used. So, F sketchbooks. These are just examples of things that I will give you an F for if you turn in a sketchbook like this. So let me briefly explain. This is not a bad drawing here at the top, but there's no value and there's no color. So, and this is not a drawing that would have taken an hour and 20 minutes. Now, if you color it, it may take you that long if you put some time and attention into the coloring. And I'm not talking about coloring book coloring. I'm talking about like using some value and some shading and some various colors. So that's one F. This one right here, you can tell, also drawn in 5-10 minutes. No coloring, no shading. This does not count as shading. This is scribbling. There was no attention made to this. This is 5 minutes before sketchbooks are due. I'm going to draw something just so I can turn it in. Please don't treat me like I'm that stupid, because I walk around the room and I see what you guys are drawing and I know how much you've done each week. I have a really good visual memory. I might not have a great memory otherwise, but visually I do have a good memory, so don't abuse my kindness. 30 minutes, that's not too bad for that lesson. That's about the longest lesson that we will have in this class, me lecturing for that long, so that's not terrible. So I hope you guys have learned something. I'm always looking forward to seeing how you guys use your sketchbooks throughout the year and the kind of work that you do. I think at the end of the semester you're going to be surprised at how much work you've actually done. So, see you later.